This has been 10-Minute Philosophy. From Buddhism to Stoicism, Confucius and Aristotle, bite-sized wisdom from some of history's greatest thinkers. Written by Patrick King, narrated by Russell Newton. Copyright 2019 by Patrick King. Production copyright by Patrick King. What's your philosophy? Philosophy is one of those words that function like a Rorschach test. A Rorschach test is otherwise known as the ink blot test. Certain types of psychologists show their patients an ambiguous image that vaguely represents an inkwell spilled onto a piece of paper to gain insight into the perspectives and interpretations of their patient. The thought is that patients will see, in the ambiguous image, whatever they want to see in it, and that it is representative of how they see the world, their emotional state, and so on. Two people looking at the same blurry splotch of ink can see two vastly different images. It will have nothing to do with the image itself. And so it is with philosophy. I bring this up because philosophy isn't always viewed with positivity or even interest. If you think of philosophy as time-wasting, thumb-twiddling, then that is undoubtedly what you will get out of it. You'll just hear a multitude of empty platitudes and wonder what the point of it all even is. This skeptical approach is fairly common and at times understandable. After all, what problems are being solved simply by thinking and pontificating about them? Indeed, if I'm hungry or in need of shelter right now, it's difficult to see the value that philosophy can add to someone's life. What tangible benefit is there to figuring out the purpose of our lives? Tangible? Zero. But philosophy was never about that. If you're looking for a field of study to enrich your immediate surroundings, I might suggest that you pick up an engineering or finance book. Philosophy has always been about enriching your thoughts for greater happiness and fulfillment, an immeasurable quantity, but perhaps the greatest purpose of all. Admittedly, this was a mindset I also used to possess. If you were to create a hierarchy in society, especially in more ancient and brutal times, surely a philosopher would rank far lower than the average hunter, carpenter, or fisherman, at least in terms of pure utility. What was the role of a philosopher in a society beyond their teaching duties? But consider how our ancestors were able to figure out calculus, discern the relative size of the earth, and map out constellations. Eventually, when food and shelter weren't immediate concerns, people were able to just sit and think about things, and this freedom of time is how humans were able to advance. Philosophers became repositories of knowledge and discourse. They became explorers, discoverers, and scientists. It is certainly no coincidence that when we look back at the lives of the most famous philosophers in history, they invariably were also scientists, teachers, and even mathematicians. The human need for understanding, some might say a sense of control, of their surroundings is insatiable, and it's only natural that would eventually spill over from practical concerns such as agriculture and calculus into topics such as purpose, ethics, morality, meaning, knowledge, and how to live. To evoke Maslow's hierarchy of needs, once our physical and then emotional needs are satisfied, we will inevitably turn our attention to learning, wisdom, exploration, and fulfillment. The word philosophy comes from the Greek phrase meaning love of wisdom, and who doesn't want more wisdom? Philosophers began with an intense curiosity about the mysterious world around them and sought out answers in the only way they could. They didn't have the benefit of science or technology to find answers, so they had to start from ground zero and use thinking, reasoning, and critical analysis to gain truth and knowledge. How might you determine why men and women are different or why the sun rises in the morning? The only place you can start is by thinking and pondering, making observations, and then challenging everything you thought you knew. This is perhaps why philosophy can appear circular and redundant, constantly asking, why do you know what you think you know? That's all they had. And you'll get a full dose of that approach when you read later on about René Descartes. They grappled with questions that we still can't prove or definitively answer, even with today's technological advances. But this didn't deter them. What is life? What is right and wrong? What is our purpose? How should we live our lives? What is real and what is not? Philosophy seeks to answer these questions, and by and large, different schools of philosophy sprang out of different answers and approaches. We're nowhere closer to objective answers to any of those questions some 2 millennia later, but many perspectives have been created, each with the possibility of increasing your happiness and fulfillment, your true benefit from learning philosophy. This will ultimately be the purpose of this book, exploring a set of approaches to fulfillment and finding one that helps you find your personal version of it. You might find that none of the approaches resonate except one. In that case, feel free to discard what you don't like. You might find that each of them resonates in their own way, and in that case, cobble together a Frankenstein version of your approach to happiness, taking bits and pieces from everything. But as you'll see from the following thought experiment, it's not so easy as simply steering your ship toward a destination. The trolley dilemma. One of the most famous philosophical questions comes in the form of the trolley dilemma, and it is a question of ethics and morality. You can think of this problem as determining what is moral and what is not, for yourself and others. In doing so, you might find that your idea of morality directly conflicts with that of others. It was originally developed as a thought experiment by Philippa Foot in 1967 and adapted by Judith Thomson afterward, and the nature of any dilemma is that it produces different answers that demand to be examined. There is fertile ground for disagreement and exploration of different interpretations. Each different answer underlies a different set of values and formative life experiences. Imagine you're standing beside some trolley tracks. You see a runaway trolley screaming down the tracks toward 5 workers who are facing away from it and don't hear it coming. Even if they miraculously become aware of their imminent mortality, they're still doomed to their deaths. You're an innocent bystander, and you fortunately have some knowledge of how trolley tracks work. You see a lever that is connected to the tracks within touching distance, and you realize that if you were to pull the lever, the trolley would be diverted down a second set of tracks and the 5 workers would be saved. However, and this is where the dilemma comes in, you would be diverting the trolley down a track that would kill 1 worker. So, would you pull the lever and save 5 people at the expense of 1? Would you even act? Could you think in a utilitarian way and reason to yourself that you're actually saving 4 lives? And would any of those types of thinking affect the amount of guilt you might feel? What about if you didn't move a muscle? Would you be morally wrong for complete inaction? What if you didn't want to be responsible for making any decision at all? What if you believed in fatalism and the matter being out of your hands? What if you thought that 1 life was equal to 4 lives in the grand scheme of things, so why bother? There is no wrong answer. The trolley itself becomes a substitute for people and forces you to think through the consequences and whether the rightness or wrongness of an action is determined solely by the outcome or by the intentions. In studies and surveys, it turns out most people would pull the lever and divert the trolley to kill 1 person while sparing 5. It seems that, instinctually, we are mostly utilitarians at heart and will do what is best for the greatest number of people. But does that mean we would sacrifice ourselves in order to let a boat full of children live? What if the 5 workers were all convicted murderers and the single worker was on par with Mother Teresa's impact? What if they were 5 elderly people with raging cancer? The permutations of what these choices can mean and what they say about us are endless. There are no correct or incorrect answers when you're seeking to gain wisdom and knowledge. Even an answer that says, "I would try to make sure all 6 people are killed," is not incorrect and provides a valid perspective. We all inherently want to do good for ourselves and others. Or do we? If this is starting to sound confusing, welcome to your quick introduction to philosophical thinking. The trolley dilemma is merely an example of the type of information and knowledge we can gain from simple pondering and thinking. It's far from a useless pursuit, as these types of considerations influence law, policy, and decisions on both conscious and subconscious levels. In this case, you're forced to explore what it means to be ethical and moral. you'll see that there is no such thing as a simple answer inside of a vacuum. Philosophical thinking may not provide tangible benefits in itself, but the process you use to get there certainly will.